Hi everyone, I'm Ray Fabole. I'm the CEO and principal lawyer at Solby Migration, an Australian immigration law firm. Welcome to Mind the Gap Australia. If this is your first time tuning into this podcast, it's specifically for employers and recruiters in Australia who want clear, grounded, no nonsense guidance on how to deal with workforce skill shortages here in Australia. And of course, how sponsorship fits into a proper workforce strategy, not just something to think about when there is a crisis and you are desperate to keep someone. Today, we are going to talk about something that comes up all the time for me. Whenever I tell someone, they ask, what do you do? And I say, I'm an immigration lawyer. The response almost always is, oh, yes, we've worked with a migration agent before. I pause when I hear that because what it actually tells me is the person hasn't been shown the differences between the qualifications and the scope of the two different professions. So, in today's episode, I am going to walk you through what the differences are, who can do what, factually and clearly, so that you can make informed decisions about who your business needs at each stage. I think that that's helpful because a business needs to understand how the profession is trained and what they're authorized to do and what it actually means for your long-term workforce planning. So let's unpack this area a little bit more. Today, we're going to cover off what actually distinguishes. So what is the difference between a lawyer and a registered migration agent when we're talking about in terms of migration? And it's more focused on the qualifications and training. Next, why the legal profession or privilege matters sometimes for your business, something that most employees do not realize until they've shared a lot of documents. Last, we're going to talk about why a sustainable workforce strategy needs to be done with the right legal structure behind it and what this looks like in practice. All right, let's get started. The reason this conversation needs to happen is simple. Most employers and recruiters have never had anyone explain what the difference is between a lawyer who practices in immigration law and a registered migration agent in a way that actually connects to their business reality. From the outside, everyone goes, well, they do visas. So it looks like it could be the same. Well, yes, we all deal with home affairs. That's correct. And we do talk about visas and we talk about sponsorship as well. They all show up at the same point, though, in your recruitment process. So, of course, it's easy to assume that the terms are actually interchangeable. When someone says, oh, yes, we've worked with agents before, when I explain that I'm an immigration lawyer, what it tells me is that they've experienced migration on a surface level, just from the forms being submitted, lodgements, and emails, but they haven't actually been shown the framework that is sitting underneath. So they don't understand the difference of the training and what it actually offers the business and what they might need. It's like when you need to understand when you go to your bookkeeper and when you would go to an accountant. What the differences are between the two will depend on what your organization is needing at a different point in time. So what I want to do today is just lay out clearly in plain English so that you understand what each profession is able to bring to the table and how to request the right support depending on what your business is actually going to need. Let's start with the foundations, how each profession is trained and regulated, and what it means in practice. A registered migration agent completes a 1-year graduate diploma in migration law and practice. So they haven't done legal studies. What they've done is studies in anything else. Then they do a graduate diploma in migration law to gain a deep understanding. They also need to pass a capstone exam, and then they will register with the Office of the Migration Agents Registration Authority, known as the OMARA. There isn't a formal supervised practice period in that profession, but they are regulated on an ongoing basis by the OMARA, and they must meet ongoing professional requirements. They're authorized to provide immigration assistance and advice on visa processes under the migration rules, or the Migration Act, to be more specific. To become a lawyer, you must complete either a 4-year degree, which is a Bachelor of Laws, or a Juris Doctor program. Then you need to do a graduate diploma in legal practice, and then you can be admitted to practice once you have done a period of supervision. When you're admitted to practice, you get actually admitted to the Supreme Court, but you don't start working independently. But initially, you're on a restricted practicing certificate, and you must be supervised for a minimum of 2 years by another senior lawyer. During this time, you need to continue working inside of a law firm, like I said, with a structure of seniors. Once you get to the point of being on an unrestricted practicing certificate, you still need to be part of a law firm. And the only way that you can be, I guess, entirely on your own to practice is later after that. You need to do further studies to obtain a principal practicing certificate, which requires more assessments, examinations, and approval by the state's law society. So by contrast, registered migration agent is able to start practicing immediately once they complete their diploma and pass their capstone, whereas a lawyer is going to be required to be supervised by other senior lawyers for quite a number of years before they can work completely independently. What I would recommend when you're looking at a migration agent is some of them have worked with some other wonderful agencies with seniors who give them good internships and supervision. So that's a good way to make sure that they're giving good advice for you. It's going to be very relevant when you are selecting who you work with, and to understand that for a lawyer, they're also trained beyond migration. So when they're trained beyond migration, they can identify things like legal risks. They can give you legal advice. It can span a number of areas, which often can be relevant to businesses. For example, the employment arrangements and entitlements under employment law, the commercial law aspects of your legal relationships, contract law terms as well. There could be family law circumstances that may affect eligibility of your visa applicants. Past conduct could be criminal law matters that also come into context here. And of course, the broader administrative law considerations that often migration doesn't just sit neatly in its own area. It can at times interlock with all of those things. When you're working through sponsorship or visa processes, you'll often be sharing a huge amount of internal business information, which is frequently commercial in confidence documents. The documents could include things like financial records, staffing details, contracts, and in that context, you'll often need to explain your genuine business need. And if you are dealing with a lawyer, your communications and documents are actually covered by legal professional privilege. What that means is that protection is not actually extended, unfortunately, to migration agents because they're not admitted to the court. And it means that the advice that has been provided to you and the documents that you have supplied under legal professional privilege with a lawyer, they can't be subpoenaed. They can't be pulled into a litigation or investigation at all, some kind of dispute. For some employers, depending on the commercial sensitivities, it may be something that they need to think about in who they're selecting to work with. You can obviously speak very frankly, share sensitive commercial information, and know that it's going to be 100% protected with a lawyer. Now, this is not to say that migration agents release information willy-nilly. They certainly don't. They will always uphold the privacy laws around protecting documents, but you do need to be in mind, I guess, if you are in a commercial space, which is subject sometimes to investigation or litigation and so on, that you may want to have that information protected by legal professional privilege so that it can't be subpoenaed. Now, let's tie this back to what actually matters for your business, your workforce strategy. I'm going to be very honest here. Sponsorship definitely shouldn't be something that you only think about when someone comes into your business and says, oh, we found this great candidate. Can we sponsor them? As you've heard from what I've explained in the previous episode, there's going to be quite a few stats that need to come into place before you come to that stage. Now, If you're always reacting instead of planning, it's going to make it tough to make sponsorship work seamlessly in your business. So I would invite you to think about having a proper legal consultation to actually understand strategically, stepping back, looking at your business, which particular roles are consistently hard to fill, which of those roles are actually going to be recognized in terms of the migration program, and potentially which ones aren't, and how you might be able to address those. Are you in a regional area where a designated migration agreement might be open for additional occupations and concessions? Do you actually have a standard business sponsorship in place? Is that enough, I guess, is the question. Do you need to look at a specific labor agreement, particularly if you're in an industry that needs to have one of those specific labor agreements? Delivering large scale projects is another area where there are structural questions about not just can we lodge this visa and this sponsorship. A standard business sponsorship gives your business approval to sponsor eligible occupations for a set period. A DARMA can give regional employers access to occupations that don't actually appear on that kind of standard list. It could also give you an advantage because you may be able to get some age, English language, or salary concessions that reflect the reality of actually trying to hire outside at big cities. So I've gone over these before, but there's quite a number of different, I guess, legal vehicles that can shape how you fit sponsorship inside of your business. And we need to have those ready at the right time so that you can respond and get the right people on board relatively quickly. If you stand alone and don't know how it interacts with employment law, commercial law, contracts, your personal circumstances, the circumstances of the actual candidates, it's very hard to have actually built the proper workforce strategy that is going to be sustainable. Not just a series of one-off visa lodgements. You need to have someone who's going to be able to look at all of those intersections and design a structure that is going to fit with your business. Now, I touched on this example a little bit, but in my business, my own business, I, for example, have an accountant and I also work with bookkeeping service. The accountant helps me to make decisions about those overall structures, the entities, the planning, getting my tax strategy right, and my bookkeeper helps with day-to-day compliance that I need and making sure that all of these things intersect with the taxation rules, making sure that the reconciliations and all the processes have been followed. Both of the roles are super important for a business, but they're definitely not the same. Just like workforce planning, this includes sponsorships in a similar light. If you think about, you need to have a holistic map, a mud map of what you're going to need for your workforce strategy and understand how all of that's going to play together. You need to have a proper understanding of the labor market landscape in order to design that. Once you've got the structure in place, then your internal HR, recruiter, or if you do have an agent that you work with, they can easily go in and implement these things through the documents that you probably first think of when you think about visas and sponsorship and nomination. That's when it becomes not too hard. But first of all, make sure that you've had that holistic workforce plan put in place first. Sponsorship should become part of your BAU. It should be repeatable, it should be strategic, and it should be part of how you hire. So to recap, we've covered off in this episode, what we actually looked at was the real differences between working with an immigration lawyer and a registered migration agent, the difference in the qualifications and training, regulation and supervision, and how those distinctions matter when you're sponsoring staff and not just lodging one-off applications. We unpacked a little bit about legal professional privilege and what it means in practice and how you need to be aware of that when you're dealing with sensitive commercial matters, and you need to protect those inside of your business. Lastly, we talked about the importance of having a proper workforce strategy and how migration law and the other elements that fit together, the commercial, the family law, the criminal law, the contracts law, the employment law, how they all fit together, and not just treating it as an emergency tool to urgently get someone in and just to sponsor, like it's just filing the documents and that's it. If today's episode made you realize that your current hiring approach isn't keeping pace with the skill shortages, and maybe you need to get a little bit more ahead in your workforce challenges and planning, then I invite you to get a little bit more clarity. We've got a 60-second business eligibility check that allows you to see whether or not sponsorship is a good option. If it sounds like you may be eligible based on that check, you'll be able to go on and book a discovery call, have a quick chat with me so I can have one of my team members and we can see whether or not sponsorship may work in your business, or if you're a recruiter, if it's something that you might be able to work better with your clients hand in hand with a bit more understanding. If you've already got a very specific case in mind that you need proper legal advice for migration right here and right now, please go ahead and book a consultation on our website. That's www.solvi.com.au. Please stop guessing and assuming. Stop putting this in the "I'll deal with it later" basket and make some decisions based on what is actually possible for your business and is well informed. Thank you once again for joining me on Mind the Gap Australia. I'm Rhea Fabole, the CEO and principal lawyer of Solving Migration. Please do like, subscribe and share, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode.